Good Wednesday afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion for August 21st, 2024. So this update is going to be pretty different from my previous videos when we were mainly focusing on the Atlantic Basin, the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico. In this update, we're going to be mainly focusing on the Central and Eastern Pacific because we have a lot of activity brewing out there. We first of all have possibly Major Hurricane Gilma with a well-defined eye that I'm about to show you on the close and zoomed in view satellite imagery. We're not going to really talk a whole lot about that one since it's no threat to any land areas, including Hawaii. But it's going to be this system off towards the west, which is now dubbed from the National Hurricane Center, or actually will soon to become the Central Pacific Hurricane Center, will be dubbed Invest 91E, as this is now a threat to the Hawaiian Islands. So taking a zoom in here, looking at Hurricane Gilma for this afternoon in Pacific Daylight Time, we can see Hurricane Gilma really has cleared out that eye pretty rapidly, actually. Some of the fastest I've ever seen with a hurricane in quite some time with a well-defined CDO. There are some concentric bands wrapping around the eye, which could indicate that an eye wall replacement cycle could already be getting underway, as this is possibly rapidly intensifying, which is quite remarkable. So now rest of the discussion will be on Invest 91E, possibly a tropical depression. Does not surprise me, and I'll tell you why here in just a second. So when examining the GOES 18 Channel 2's visible satellite imagery from tropicaltidbits.com, link in the description, this is a meso floater, so this updates every 1 minute, gives us a much better view and motion of these clouds of what we're seeing. And right now, we are beginning to get more deeper convection that is firing closer and closer to the center. You can see it right here in the last few frames. Seeing some deep convection bubbling up there to the south. And when we examine the center a little bit more closely, we can definitely see there is a circulation here. If you look underneath this CDO to the south, we have southwesterly flow wrapping all the way around, and we're getting northerly winds on the western side of this wave pocket. Possibly a closed surface flow here. We'll have to wait and see what the NHC does with this in their next update, if this is indeed a tropical depression or if it's still an open wave. But nevertheless, this has formidable high chances of developing into a tropical depression in the next 2 to 7 days. Now, when we take a look at the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook from the National Hurricane Center here, definitely a very busy East Pacific and even a Central Pacific here. Again, 2 areas to watch on top of Gilma. That is now a hurricane, of course. Winds here, this will soon update. I know this is going to be a little outdated, but I'm very confident that this has winds of at least 100 plus miles an hour at the very most right now. Possibly even a major hurricane. Does not surprise me at all when the NHC does their update in a couple of hours here. And then, of course, we have another disturbance that is located to the east of that has an 80% chance. But what is striking is when we zoom over here and look at our disturbance, that will pop up. There we go. This has a 90% chance of tropical development, and if not right now, this could be a tropical depression as soon as in a couple of hours, perhaps. Recon is on their way out. They will be flying into the system in a couple of days to provide a much better assessment of the exact intensity and structure of Invest 91L or 91E, excuse me. Used to say my L's, and this is a threat to Hawaii. If we actually look at the Central Pacific, we can see here is Hawaii here, and there is 91E, almost said it again, with a 90% chance of tropical development. Now, of course, not in today's video, the Atlantic looking much quieter, in fact, unusually quiet for this time of the year during the climatological ramp up in the Atlantic hurricane season. Seems really quiet for the next 7 days, and that is not surprising given how active the East Pacific actually is right now. So instead, we're really going to have to tackle Invest 91E as it remains a threat to the Hawaiian Islands. Possibly going to become a hurricane on approach to the islands. Does not surprise me. Here's why. When we look at the GFS 200 millibar upper level wind chart here, again, this is really high up where jet planes fly, about 34 to 38,000 feet. And this is giving us our wind direction. So when we kind of examine the upper levels of the atmosphere here, in general, there is some easterly shear that is, or northeasterly shear that is over 91E right now. That's why we have the deep convection to the south, because when you examine, when we have the system moving in this general direction right now, you have this northeasterly flow on top of the system that equates to more of a northerly shear over 91E. And that's why we are seeing asymmetrical look to the convection, where it's mainly to the south and not spreading all the way around. And also there is some dry air encroaching onto the system too. But as we go forward though, this upper level wind pattern becomes quite optimal for 91E to thrive in. We have this big upper level subtropical ridge at 200 millibars, what we call an isotropic or barotropic ridge at this level. This is not what you typically find, at 850 millibars or 700 millibars, which is about 5 to 10,000 feet. Instead, this is way up there where our jet planes fly. So when going forward, we can see that the upper level wind profile changes. So instead of northeasterly flow, we're seeing more easterly and if not even southeasterly flow over the system. So that means our shear decreases instead of increases. However, though, this is not going to last long because this ridge is not moving in tandem with our disturbance to its south. And in fact, we have a trough that is to the northwest of Hawaii that is going to encroach this westerly flow. So as we go forward here, the system is going to be able to strengthen because it's going to be in a very optimal background environment with a lot of moisture, sea surface temperatures that are warm enough to support tropical and hurricane development, and we just have enough background state to work with here. But that pattern changes. Once this gets past the big island of Hawaii, for one, if it does go over the big island of Hawaii, its tall mountains of being 14,000 feet significantly disrupt the vortex. So instead of it missing the island to the south, where it might thrive a little better, it hits these islands, it's going to really cause a lot of disruption. But not only that, there will be atmospherical disruptions too, due to increasing westerly flow. So you can see here, easterly flow in the next 2 to 3 days. As we go into, say, this weekend, the upper level pattern changes. We get this westerly flow hitting the system on the western side, bringing drier air into the system. And so the ending result here is that the system is not going to do very well. Not only if it hits Hawaii, but if it even misses Hawaii, it's going to probably struggle. The further south this goes, essentially, it could thrive better versus if it goes further north. Because you can see here, the westerly flow over this system really increases to more than 25 knots. And when you factor in the low levels, remember, the low-level winds are blowing out of the easterly direction, and you have your upper-level winds blowing out of the westerly direction. So this is a very significant wind shear of over 40 to even 60 knots over this system. Because when you par, again, say 20 knots here, maybe 20 to 30 knot winds at the low levels, and you go into the upper levels and you look at the flow there, that's about 20 to 30 knots. You do the net factor, you get about 40 to 60 knot wind shear over this system, vertical wind shear, which is a change with wind with height. And you can see no problemo with this system, really gonna have a hard time reorganizing, or whatever is left with it could even get decoupled completely entirely. This is seen on the deep layer moisture plot. The brown colors indicate a lot of dry air into the atmosphere. The darker the browns, the drier the air. The greener the colors, the more moisture you have in the atmosphere. So when we go forward here in time, we can see, yes, 91E does pretty good under the environment of divergent flow aloft, anticyclonic ridge that is in the atmosphere, and even some anticyclonic wave breaking event as well over this area, which does pretty well with this system. But we can see as we go to about Sunday into Monday, so this would be Sunday night, Sunday afternoon, evening, actually Sunday evening more so likely, Hawaiian time, into, say, early Monday morning, we can see this gets really decoupled. I mean, very asymmetry to the system. And yeah, then it really decouples. There's not much left with this, and it really weakens once it runs into that wall of deep layer shear. Now, we're not going to discuss about the next two systems because right now we can only do one system at a time. I do this in the Atlantic, so I'll do it in the Pacific. We don't want to get overwhelmed with, oh, we got two systems headed for Hawaii. Besides the second system, if we just went out really far out, there's a lot of uncertainty with that right now. It is moving all over the place. So we're only going to focus on one system at a time. I know a lot of you are like, oh, David, there's two systems coming for Hawaii. I am aware of that, but I'm not going to jump ahead of myself and say there will be two hurricanes or tropical systems hitting Hawaii, because that's going to cause panic. That's going to cause a lot of fear, and we're not here to do that. So now, as far as the system goes, on approach to Hawaii, let's back this out a little bit. This is Sunday morning on the HMON. This is a hurricane-specific model that I like to use because sometimes our global models like the GFS, the European model, do not resolve fine-scale equations very well with the exact intensity, the structure of the hurricane. And so therefore, that's why NOAA renders these models. These are hurricane-specific models. And so when we go forward in time, here, there is the big island of Hawaii. No, this is not the Windward Islands, folks. Don't get confused because I know we're not used to seeing something hit Hawaii very often. Actually, maybe once every couple of years you get a hurricane hitting Hawaii, and in rare cases, even once every 4 or 5 years. So yes, Hawaii is not an easy target for tropical storms or hurricanes like this. And in this case, this could be an easy target for this system. This is 91E approaching the big island of Hawaii. And you can see winds here are hurricane force. See this purple donut right here? That's hurricane force winds. Pressure's 980 millibars. That supports hurricane intensity on this particular run. But watch, once it hits the big island here, it really gets destroyed. The tall mountains here really rip this. And so on the other side of this, the system really struggles. I mean, down to 1,007 millibars by early Monday morning, or by late Monday morning, perhaps. Actually, this would be in the early morning hours for August 26th. You can see barely tropical storm force winds here of about 40 miles an hour. So you go from a hurricane on approach to the Big Island to actually not seeing a whole lot of wind with this. Actually seen a lot of wind, but nothing too extreme. But also our rainfall too. Look at how this changes. Lots of rain. You could bet on some significant flood problems, possibly a foot of rain for the big island of Hawaii. That is no surprise by the tall mountains there. Then once this gets over the big island, it really kind of just kind of disintegrates and gets opened up into a tropical depression with rain remaining over the other islands of Oahu. If you're on Kauai, if you're on Maui, keep that in mind. If you're on Lanai, as well as Molokai, keep that in mind. Getting some rain out of this is certainly a sure bet, even if this passes just to the south of the big island. Yeah, you don't need a direct hit to cause impacts. Here's the HAVS-B, similar output here, but only further south. And again, because this is further south, this is able to hold together quite nicely instead of the HMON destroying the system because it moves over the big tall island there of Hawaii. All right, and then of course you got the tall mountains here. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now the big question really remains, how much rainfall could you see out of Invest 91E, possibly our tropical depression that develops here? Well, right now there's a lot of uncertainty on the deterministic European model, and that's why I don't like using these very often, and I would rather use ensembles, but of course the ensembles do not show Hawaii. If we even went there for an example, you can see it pops this up to the United States. So that's why we're just going to stick with the Hawaiian version instead. So yeah, that's the unfortunate. So let's go back to that and show you over the next 5 to 6 days. And we can see over the big island of Hawaii, you might see as much as, say, 6 to 12 inches of rainfall. If you're on the big island here of, say, Maui, you could see as much as, say, 6 to maybe 10 inches of rainfall. Versus, look at this. Look at out here towards Lanai. You might only see about a tenth to a quarter of an inch. Yeah, that's the uncertainty here. Really makes a difference. If this goes right over these islands at the wrong time, you can see a lot more rainfall over the big islands here, including the smaller islands. All right, so that's what that shows. What about the GFS model, the deterministic forecast? Very different here with its forecast over the next, say, 5 to 6 days. Much more rainfall is expected here on this model, possibly over a foot of rainfall for that big island. Wow, that's a lot. And over the eastern half, the easternmost tip there of Maui of the island, you might see 4 inches. And look at this, if you're on Lanai, you might see as much as a half an inch. Molokai, maybe a little more than that. And then, of course, for the most northwestern islands like Kauai, yes, Kauai, you might see anywhere between about, on a rough range, between about a quarter of an inch to as much as 2 inches of rainfall, just again, depending on the rain shadowing effect, the angle of attack. Another important impact you really need to be aware about with this system will be the high surf that is expected. Lots of wave action on the water here of the ocean. So if you're going to the beaches, really be aware of that. There's going to be a lot of surf. Not safe to go to the water at all for this weekend. I know a lot of people like to take vacations over there and like to kind of head to the beach, but probably wait that off until the middle or end of next week. Well, if there's more additional systems, it could be a little while. So going forward here on the European wave forecast, we can see that surf is going to be highest the further south you go, because that's where the strongest winds are going to be. But in general, we're looking at surf anywhere between maybe 10 to as much as 15 feet. Yeah, 15 feet, maybe even a little higher locally on the southernmost tips here of the big island of Hawaii. So again, if you're going to the beaches, keep that in mind. Also, some individual sets which indicate our maximum individual wave heights with some of these sets could top 20 to even 25 feet, and then up to maybe 30 to 40 feet for the southern tip of the big island there of Hawaii. So not a good time to go to the beaches at all this weekend, in simple reasons because of the surf. This is also in accordance too with the GFS model, Wave Watch 3 model, showing us a similar outcome here with the surf, 10 to 15 feet, perhaps breaching 18 to 20 feet in the southern ends there. And of course, maximum individual wave heights here could surpass 30 feet easily for the southernmost island there of Hawaii. So again, surf is going to really be up, hence its name, Surf's Up. So now that we talked about the impacts for Hawaii, what about the track guidance forecast? Everyone here that is watching this, I'm sure from Hawaii, there's over 1 million people that live on some of these islands. So where is this going to go, and how close could it impact the big island of Hawaii? Well, there is still a chance, theoretically, because this is going to get very close. And even if it doesn't hit the big island of Hawaii, there will be impacts. There will be strong winds near tropical storm force. There will be high surf, and even some minor coastal flooding and storm surge included with that. And of course, some heavy rainfall, some of the outer bands that move through, and some rain shadowing enhanced areas. So we can see that there is some spread here with the model guidance. We can see that there with the range of possible outcomes with the HWFI model indicating a weaker signal. So the weaker this is, the furthest west it's going to go, and the most south it's going to be from Hawaii. But if this is able to gain intensity fairly quickly, which some of the models, or even including the European and the GFS indicate, this could get very close, possibly the southern tip here of Hawaii. And that means folks that live on these islands, Kauai, Lanai, Molokai, including the big island of Hawaii, Maui, really need to be paying close attention to this. Yes, Kauai is way out here too, and that is not far to the north of some of these spaghetti plots. So in other words, even so this does not make a direct impact, there will be some indirect impacts, such as some surf, some high surf, heavy rainfall, and strong winds, and some maybe coastal flood impact. The intensity forecast is pretty much very uncertain as well. There is some high ceilings to this, but in general, we're thinking probably a tropical storm at the moment. But given that there is some a consistency among our HMON and HAVS A and B model runs that show that this is going to become a hurricane. My intensity forecast is on the high end of the scale here, indicating that this will become a high-end tropical storm with winds of 70 miles an hour on approach to the big island of Hawaii. I am not calling this to become a hurricane just yet. It is going to become a tropical storm. It will earn its name. I'm very sure at this point there's nothing that stops it from developing into something that would otherwise not get named. So therefore, I do expect this to become a high-end tropical storm with 70-mile-an-hour wind. So looking at the SHIPS model, this stands for Statistical Hurricane Intensity Prediction Scheme. All right, it's an acronym. That's why it's all in uppercase letters here. Pretty cool, neat thing to see. So instead of looking at a numerical ones and zeros version on the RAL site, Tropical Cyclone Guidance Project, we're looking at this on a better, more visualization friendly for you all viewers that want to see this. So the maximum potential intensity theoretically in this area is around category 4 to category 5 intensity. We're not going to see that anything like that, I promise you all. We're not going to get there, I don't think, because sea surface temperatures, the wind shear, the background state, just not overly, hyperly conducive for that. And the wave is developing in somewhat of a drier environment, and you can see it here. Relative humidities not overly saturated, less than 60%. And theoretically, you want the deep layer environmental moisture to be greater than at least 65 to 70% to really kickstart some more explosive organization and intensification. And fortunately, we're not seeing that here. In fact, by the day 5 time frame, we see relative humidities dropping below 40%. So that is a pretty dry atmosphere. Upper ocean heat content, not a problem. So we're seeing some heat content being stored, and sea surface temperatures also generally favorable for development with this system. So in general, anyone living on the big island of Hawaii, if you're on Maui, Lanai, Molokai, over here, you really need to be paying close attention to the system. Again, we could be looking at a high-end tropical storm or hurricane hitting these islands potentially. If this goes further south, if this goes this way, that is to be determined once this system actually has a possessed surface low or a consolidation of that low. Honolulu, again, please be on guard. And also, if you are on Kauai, way out over here, needs to be on the lookout for this system too. All right. My hearts and thoughts are all those that do live on these islands. I know Maui and even some parts of Hawaii here, the Big Island, is very populated and notorious for its great volcano watching. But instead of watching volcanoes, you may want to actually put your eyes on 91E instead. But anyways, to review with what we talked about, again, 91E, a big threat to the Hawaiian Islands over the next 3 to 5 days. So again, stay up to date here on the YouTube channel for latest updates on a daily basis, as this remains a big threat to the Big Island. And then we're watching Gilma. Right now it is likely to move generally west-northwestward, but there are some early indications this could actually make a bend back to the west in the day 5 time frame. So we'll keep you updated on that system as it remains a threat. And then another additional system developing out here needs to also be watched eventually, because this could also race off towards the west and towards the west-northwest in the next 3 to 6 days. And if that develops, we'll see where it goes from there. But anyways, if you did enjoy today's detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion on Invest 91E, please hit the red subscribe button right now if you haven't already. Hit the like button, share this video with your family and friends on social media, and never forget to also hit the bell notification icon to get latest updates here on the YouTube channel. Like I said earlier, as long as this remains a threat to Hawaii, we will be introducing daily updates on this, possibly rapid updates if things evolve at a fairly quick pace. See you guys back here tomorrow with another update on 91E/depression.